Hey guys, in the previous video we added our project goals, working principles, objectives, test framework goals, important files, etc. all, but we forgot to push it to GitHub. So for example, if you look into GitHub, the README file is not yet there. So in this video what we're going to do is we are going to push our updated changes into GitHub, and also in the process see what are the challenges or problems we encounter along the way. So one of the tools that I use to work with GitHub is even though you can directly work with IntelliJ, but I like to work with Visual Studio Code. So now code is on my file system path. So if I give in terminal code dot, let's zoom this code a little bit. If I do code dot, it opens up Visual Studio Code, and if you remember, we worked on two files. One file was the README file itself. In VS Code, if you click on this icon, it shows you what was the change before, what is the change now. Like you can see, README file was completely created from the scratch. That's why you see nothing here. Another file that we had was this PNG file, which was coming from the drawing, end-to-end process drawing. And these are the two files that we are interested to push into GitHub. But actually, if you look at this this change log, you see there are much more files present there which we are not interested in version controlling. So for example, all these files that are coming from .idea folder, they are needed by IntelliJ IDEA, but we don't need them, so we don't want to version control them. The notes is something that we make for each video. We also don't want to version control it, right? So the only two files that we're interested in are README file and end-to-end test workflow PNG file. So this brings us to the goal and objective of this session, and that is, how do we ignore unimportant or runtime files that we're not interested in version controlling, and how do we only see the files that we're interested in version controlling. And this goal translates into covering one of the important files that I mentioned in the README file, and that was gitignore file. So for example, if I open Windows 1, because it's more easier to see from here, so this will basically cover this gitignore file, right? So let's do just that. The way you create a gitignore file is very simple. The convention, like for README file, you remember everything was uppercase. For gitignore file, the convention is you put everything in lowercase starting with a dot. So let's just do that. We are in the root repository. We click on new, we click on file, we give a dot, and we say gitignore file, right? So now this adds a gitignore file in your root repository. Now what do you want to ignore? You keep on adding the stuff that you want to ignore. So for example, we want to ignore all .idea files, right? And if you just mention .idea, and if you open VS Code again, you will see all the .idea files are now gone, right? So gitignore files helps us with that. We also want to ignore these extra files that we're not interested in. For example, this notes.txt file. So let's go back and also ignore that. So let's say ignore all uninterested files, right? And let's put notes.txt in the list. And if we open VS Code again, you will see that now even the notes.txt file is gone, and now this leaves us with only three files: the README file that we created in the last video, the end-to-end test workflow file, and this new gitignore file that we added just now in this video. So let's do one thing. Let's push this gitignore file first to the project, right? And maybe even before that, let's do something else. Let's have a look at, so in this case I added only two things into the gitignore file, but depending on which programming language you're working, there are even standard files that you can pick up, which can help you ignore a lot of stuff. So for example, if I go to internet, I already searched with something called so if you say git ignore Java example gist. You can see some examples. I already opened like 2 of them. One of them is here. It has got like 4 stars. The other one is from gitignore Max, and irrespective of stars, I think I liked what this guy has created, because a lot of stuff that we will in future ignore is mentioned here. Like when we'll start adding Maven stuff, when we'll start, when different people might use different IDs, like somebody might IntelliJ, somebody might use Eclipse, Visual Studio Code, etc., etc. So in the future, we would like to use this gitignore file sample. But for now, if you remember, one of our approaches is a problem solving based learning. Since we have not come across these problems, we are not going to, put all this stuff in the gitignore file. For now, what we will do is just put this information as one of the references. So let's go to IntelliJ, and in the README file, if you remember, in references, we add all important stuff. So we are going to do the same here. If we go in home, and we will say Java gitignore file example, and in the future when the need arises, then we will use this sample in our project. Not for now. Coming back, so let's commit this gitignore file. By now you know the way we commit any file is by adding this file, which is also called staging the file, by giving a meaningful comment. So for example, we will say added gitignore file, and now we have committed the change. So far, if you remember, what we have been doing is, if I do a git branch, I have directly committed my change into the main branch, right? And if you want to push it, you will say git push, and the change will go into your GitHub project. So for example, if I go to GitHub now, and if I refresh this page again, you will see now we have 2 files here, like the repository, which contains the end-to-end process, but also the gitignore file. Now this approach can work if you are the only one who is going to work in your project, but if you're working with other people, this is not the approach to follow. So in the next video, actually what I'm going to show is what is a good way to share your work with other people on GitHub. So instead of like committing everything on main and doing a git push, we will learn better ways of collaborating with other people by the way of creating pull requests. So have a good day. Catch you later. See you. Bye bye.